Okay, we're back. And let's finish up chapter 8, cell reproduction. This would be 106, cell repro 40. We should be able to finish it up on this video. So we're going to go to table 8.1, look at the most common human sex chromosome abnormalities. Okay, so here are the what's called sexual genotypes: XXY, XYY, XXX, XO. The normal, remember, is either XX or XY. So first one, Klinefelter syndrome. This is a two X's and a Y, and this is the closest thing that you'd think of having a human hermaphrodite. A hermaphrodite is an organism that is both genders at the same time, because this individual is male, has male genitals. They might not be too well developed, but female secondary sexual characteristics. Most prominent being is they grow breasts. They usually get mastectomies, and they go through life as males because they really are, they have male genitals. They might be sterile, I think. Then XYY. Now here's the only instance where this must have happened in male meiosis. Remember, I told you that these non-disjunctions usually happen in females, but they can't happen in males. And this obviously had to have happened in a male, right? Because there's two Ys. And females don't have a Y chromosome, so it couldn't happen in a female. Okay, so they're pretty much normal. It used to be thought that they were more violent than regular men because of some British guy who looked at how many XYY males. This is also called Jacobs syndrome, JACOB, Jacobs syndrome. There was a higher percentage of people in prison with Jacobs syndrome than outside of prison. But they didn't even, but I don't know if he even correlated with violent crime. And there was a guy called Richard Speck. He was a serial killer in Florida back in the 70s. I think he killed 7 or 8 nurses. They usually are really tall and usually have really pockmarked faces because they have severe acne as kid. And this guy, Richard Speck, he was really tall. He had a really pockmarked face. They figured he was XYY. Turns out he wasn't. So that was debunked. Okay. Triple X. Not a rating for pornographic movie, but a sexual genotype, triple X. It's also sometimes called meta female, and this is normal female. I mean, absolutely normal. Nothing is going on. It looks completely normal, and here's probably why it is. And this is something that's not in the book, so you should write this down. Beta bodies, bar bodies, BARR, bar bodies. Here's the thing: even though females have 2 X's, they only use one of them. In every one of the woman's cells, one of the X chromosomes is turned off and becomes something called a bar body. And you can detect it under a microscope. And in half of the cells, dad's X chromosome is shriveled up because non-functional, and you only use mom's. In the other half of the cells, mom's shrivels up and becomes a bar body, and you use dad's. So here's the thing: women are what's called natural mosaics. A mosaic is an individual with 2 different genetic combinations. This can happen in, for example, fraternal twins that merge. So the fraternal twins are from 2 different eggs, 2 different sperm, but instead of staying apart, they merge. And you end up, and it could be male and female. So you can have a person whose half of their cells have 2 X's and half of the cells have XYs, and they have indeterminate genitals. But every female is a natural mosaic because, the 2 X's are homologous. They have the same genes, but they could have different alleles depending upon how many loci are heterozygous. So that's the situation. Okay, so this metafemale would have 2 bar bodies and is only using 1. So that's why there's not any problem, because they're not using extra chromosomes because they become bar bodies. Okay, then Turner syndrome, XO, the only monosomy that is viable. It says female, and there could be some issues with them being being mentally challenged, or they were talking about having them wet necked and everything, but that's really variable. There's some that are completely normal because I witnessed it. There was a student that came up to me after we discussed it in class, that came up to me and showed me her karyotype. And I said, well, this is interesting. And where's your other Y? She didn't have one. She had Turner syndrome. And she was perfectly normal. So that's variable. If there's anything going on with a Turner syndrome person. Okay, but the other abnormality in the sex chromosomes would be OY. For example, an egg that doesn't have an X and fertilized by a Y sperm, that's a monosomy, and that would be lethal, like all their monosomies, except for Turner. You have to have an X chromosome, at least one. It's a really big, important chromosome. You got to have one. Okay, so many species can reproduce both sexually and asexually. Asexual reproduction eliminates the need to expend energy forming gametes and copulating with a partner and finding a partner, because actually finding a sexual partner is a really dangerous thing in the natural world. And usually it's the males that have to go find the females because they're expendable. Because eggs are much more valuable than sperm. Here's the thing also, difference between male and female meiosis. How often over the course of a month, how many cell unical meiosis in a female? Well, there's a few in the ovaries, but one only succeeds. Right? One every month. Usually, human females make 1 egg per month. That's it. How many sperm does a man make over the course of a month? Gazillions. I mean, billions and billions of sperm. Each ejaculate contains over 100 to 300 million. So sperm are really plentiful, and they're really cheap, and so males become more expendable. The females are much more valuable because they only make a few. And here's the interesting thing also. As I said, a oocyte, male meiosis makes 4 functional sperm every time, right? But I just said females make 1 oocyte per month, not 4. Well, what happened to the other 3? Well, what happens is after meiosis 1, 2 cells are formed. Remember, 2 haploid cells with a haploid number of replicated chromosomes. One of them shrivels up and becomes a non-functional cell called a polybody. It's called the first polybody. And then so we only have 1 cell now with the haploid number of replicated chromosomes. And that cell is what's ovulated. Right? And then it lasts for 48 hours after it's ovulated. And here's the interesting thing. If it's not fertilized by a sperm, it doesn't finish meiosis. That cell is ovulated, arrested in metaphase 2, and it will not complete, and it will degenerate in 48 hours in metaphase 2 if it's not fertilized. So it doesn't even complete meiosis unless it's fertilized. If it's fertilized, then the male chromosomes have to wait until the female chromosomes go through meiosis 2 and kick out what's called a second polar body. So a second polar body is made if an egg cell is fertilized. And then that one set of single chromosomes combines with the set of male single chromosomes to make a 46 single chromosomes, and you've got a zygote. Right? Okay, asexual reproduction confers evolutionary advantage when organisms are sparsely distributed or superbly suited to a stable environment. Because why do you want to scramble things up if you're suited superbly to a stable environment, you know? And also, asexual organisms make many, many more offspring because every single individual gives birth. Sexually producing species, only half the population gives birth. Females. Males are just sperm donors, you know? So we should be overrun with asexually reproducing species, and sex should be like a really rare thing in special circumstances, but it's the other way around. So I often say in other classes, what's the point of males? Males are a crippling disadvantage because they don't give birth. But our role, male role, is genetic variability. Without males, we don't got genetic variability. That's our role, and we take it very seriously. Okay. So here's a strawberry plant, and there's a runner. And that runner will travel along and form a whole other plant someplace else, a clone of the plant producing the runner. So this is vegetative propagation and asexual reproduction. Okay, so sexual reproduction may convey an evolutionary advantage by producing offspring of varied genetic makeup. For the red queen hypothesis, to make sure that you change your locks. Every generation you change the combinations of locks so that pathogens can't get the keys, can't by chance get keys and just wipe you out. It's to keep ahead of our pathogens and reduce the incidence of harmful genes more rapidly, because if you have a harmful gene, and like I said, a lot of mutations lead to defective genes, or harmful genes that lead to genetic diseases. And most of them, fortunately, are what's called recessive. We're going to get to that when we talk about genetics, how if it's recessive, you need 2 copies of the gene to have that condition. If you only get 1, you're perfectly fine. You can pass it on to your offspring, but you're perfectly fine. So here's the thing, if something really bad develops in an asexual organism, then all the offspring are going to have it, you know. But if it happens in a sexually producing species, then you may give that bad gene to your offspring, but your sexual partner gives that offspring a good gene. So it offsets it. And so so even though you're carrying a bad gene, and everybody, all of us, are carrying some seriously bad alleles, but we don't have these genetic conditions because we have because they're recessive, and we only have 1 of them, and we have 1 good one, right? So that's one advantage of sex. Oh, and I think that's it, because all the rest of this chapter is just figures of meiosis, which we've already gone over. So this was a short one. So this is good. I'll stop this one, and this is the last, so we're finished with chapter 8, cellular reproduction. So this is, as I said, this is going to be 106 cell repro 4. Okay, so see you later.